Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. As things happen, Adam hasn't quite made it yet. He's going to be driving if he joins us. Dang it, I forgot, Ben. I was going to tell everyone that Ben was Adam and ask how he looks with a beard.
Too late.
So I blew that one. Sorry. So Ben Connor is with us. Missy, our moderator, just dropped off of, I guess she had a weak signal where she was and she dropped off. So we're moderator list right now. But actually, Missy and I, before Ben joined, we were watching the conversation here between Cami Day and Bev Ball and Dalton County Girl. And Cami and Bev, I've seen on here before. Welcome back, Dalton County. I don't know if I've seen your name on here before. Maybe Dalton County or Dalton Country Girl. Maybe that's an alias. I understand that. We all need those from time to time. But welcome to all three of you. Yes, I was on Court TV one of the nights this week. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Bev Ball is worried that she's not going to be able to stay awake for this live. I have that effect on women. I think any women that are listening should be concerned about that. But also Bev's in the UK. It looks like it's about 11:30 p.m. in the UK. But welcome you three and all others. Kimberly has joined us. We always like to acknowledge and thank Kimberly for, first of all, just making us all laugh nonstop, but also for her role with the Facebook group with the merch. We haven't mentioned merch in a while, but still merch available. And who else has joined us? Dalton Country Girl, you've got to let us know if you're a regular or a little bit more about you. Lee T. And Lee, let me know if you pronounce it Lee or Lay or something else, just so I'm not paranoid about that. And Adam is here. Here we go. All right, welcome, Adam. Rachel's with us.
Thanks for having me in today, Rex. Road tripping. Just got into Phoenix. Should be at my final destination in about 30 minutes.
Yeah, so he got into Phoenix. It's still a half hour to where he lives. That's frustrating for me when I drive down there. So Lee T's from Nashville, and Rachel's with us. Kimberly, I mentioned. I'm sorry, Ali 79. Garrett Elliott says hello, friends, and welcome to all of you. Sorry if there's someone I missed there, but you notice the dynamic's a little bit different today because we have Ben here. Adam just showed up. Adam's on a road trip. Adam, do you want to tell us what you're doing?
I'm changing my profession from a professional pickleball player to a new professional mover. What I'll do is I'll fly out to wherever you are. I'll pack up your U-Haul, and then I'll get in the U-Haul, now that I've had 7 hours in this U-Haul, and drive your stuff to wherever your storage unit is. And then I'll go to your storage unit, unpack it, and then that's it. But that's as far as I go.
Okay, not everyone heard all of that, but apparently Kimberly B took it that you're on the way to see her. So it sounds like you've got a new gig here, and she found a cow for you. So good luck.
I need my cow.
Leslie Bryant, 8:40 a.m. Sunday morning. Welcome to you. Now, Ben Connor is with us, as he's been several times, and we're grateful for that. We told all of you we're starting on a new emphasis between 911 and 1111, with 1111 being Veterans Day here in the United States. And we want to talk, we've been talking about hope and healing on the podcast for some time. We want to focus on veterans during that time, and especially veterans that have been dealing with post-traumatic stress, PTS. You notice I left the D off, and that's a subject for today's live. We have Ben here. I learned so much when Ben talks to us about, well, anything he talks to us about, but particularly the subject today is about trauma. And right away, I learned from Ben the first time he talked to us about it. Now, Ben has PTSD, and of course, I'll let him speak here in a minute. But one of the first things I learned is when he said, trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter how you get it. It doesn't matter if it's combat, it's still your brain works with it similarly. And I'm going to let him talk more about that. But we have scheduled for the next couple of weeks as guests on the podcast people that Ben knows that have been dealing with PTS. And we thought Ben's explanation of how to deal with trauma and also how you can possibly deal with trauma while you're experiencing it so you don't have post traumatic stress, so you can deal with it appropriately while you have it there. Ben, welcome back. For the people that don't know, give us a brief background about your own dealings with trauma and where that has led you to date, if you would.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Ben, everybody. Hi to those of you I've seen before. I am Adam's cousin and Rex's nephew, for those of you that don't know. So we got all this family stuff going on the podcast right now. I do not drive a U-Haul, nor will I let Adam move my things when we move coming up this fall. He's not going to drive any of my stuff. So,
great mover.
I'm wary of your experience and podcasting while driving, so I'm gonna just keep it to one thing at a time.
And Ben has the giant sense of humor, the best sense of humor.
I traveled through my own difficulties with trauma. I am a survivor of many kinds of abuse. So I traveled through sexual abuse and emotional abuse, as well as physical abuse, all through my childhood and my adolescence. And then when I went to war, I decided to add on to that, combat trauma from being a search and rescue medic in the military. During 17 years of war, I did 6 years active duty and then 11 as a contractor doing the same job for the Department of State and a couple of other guys, the DEA and DOE. So I worked in that space for a long time, and then I came back, and in that period of 17 years that I was doing that work, I ran into an issue with something that I couldn't understand. I was, in a space where my body was responding to something that I didn't recognize, and then the way that my body was acting, I couldn't control. And so I was in a puddle of sweat and jittery and not understanding what was going on and couldn't get a straight thought in my head, couldn't come out of it on my own. I spent several hours in the aftermath of what people call panic attacks, which was just a flood from a trigger that I got that was connected to all this negative belief. So that was the first time that I recognized that there was something going on that I couldn't handle myself. And I went to counseling and I fired several counselors, thought they didn't know what they were talking about. And then I dove into that on my own to try to figure out how I could solve that problem. And I went to school to become a counselor and traveled my own journey, healed myself, found a pathway to do that for others. And so that's what I do professionally, is I take people on that same pathway that I used to get to peace inside my own head. The guy who I think described trauma the best, the way that I understand it, is this physician from Canada called Gabor Mate. And he's done a lot of talks about this. He spent 14 years treating addicts in this really tough part of Canada that they had a name for. I can't remember what it is, something alley or something like that, where they were just overloaded in the hospital with drug addiction. And he treated that for a long time. And one of the things that he talks about is how he recognized that as a society, we've labeled people as homeless and addicts and criminals and things like that. And what he found was really they were just deeply tortured by an idea of self that was negative. And I call that the I am not, or the big lie that we have in the back of our minds that our trauma is connected to. and it causes us to have this flood of physical response and emotion that we don't quite understand all the time. And so it's really this idea of self that we call trauma. Anything your brain can't explain at the time that you're experiencing it can be found in that category. And in psychology, we call it big T and little t, like for violent trauma and things like that, or little t for emotional trauma. The reality is it's anything that your brain can't unpack on its own, and it believes it's going to be overwhelmed. And so it traps it in the limbic system, which is the part of your brain where you relive things through the five senses. And it doesn't let you touch it because your brain wants you to survive. So it says every time that gets triggered, I'm going to enact my fight or flight mode, which is that elevated heart rate, rapid breathing, shut down your metabolism so you can divert all your physical resources to running or fighting. And that's that survival instinct that's supposed to be there for a physical threat that isn't supposed to be connected to an emotional threat, a feeling, something that can't actually kill you. And your brain just misinterprets it, and it gets stuck there and we trip over it. So post-traumatic stress is the combination of those factors.
Let me interject a question at this point. So that makes the case for, I can't remember the technical name, when you block out memories and they come back to you later. What's that term?
Yeah, when you get triggered, or when you've dissociated maybe from that experience and you've buried it, and then it revisits because it hasn't been processed. So your brain is kind of wandering around in there, or it gets triggered and it comes back up.
But in your experience, that's a valid event where you've had something, you forget all about it, even though it was a big event in your life, is very traumatic. You can actually forget about it, and then it's brought back to you later in life.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I'll see clients and they'll say, well, I don't really have any trauma in my life. And I say, that's fine. Let's talk about, the message in your head that says I'm not good enough, or I'm trapped, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not worthy. And we start going through EMDR with that targeted, and they start to remember events that are attached to it that sent them that message. And they'll say to me all the time, I didn't even know that this was such a big deal. I thought I had gotten past this. And a lot of people will say, well, it's been a long time. I should be over that. That shouldn't really be an issue. I don't think it's really an issue. When it gets triggered, it incites their fight or flight response. And so it is the root, or the index, what we call the index trauma. And that happens all the time.
Very good. Very good.
My question is when it does get triggered, can you go 5 or 10 years and think everything's fine, and then something 5 or 10 years down the road triggers it and it all comes back? Or is there a timetable on that where it does just go away?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. That's a very individual experience. So sometimes it happens where you re-experience that 10 years later, you re-experience it 5 years later. For me, all the experiences I had when I was at this daycare as a kid, I had completely forgotten and buried. And I didn't start seeing flashes of that in my memory and in my dreams, and it didn't start disturbing me until I was 30. So I'd always felt kind of weird about those experiences. I always had kind of questions around that time of my life, but it was largely just a big black hole in my head. I didn't really think about it. I didn't have a ton of memory involved in it. And then, 27 years later, it started popping up. So that stuff can happen, and it's just part of your protective mechanism. Your brain is just trying to help you survive. It thinks if you go into those memories that it's going to overwhelm you. And so it protects you from that.
Okay, so that's fascinating in and of itself. There are a couple questions I'm going to hold off on. Let's carry on to the subsequent questions I had for you today, Ben, and then we'll come back to both of those. So if you're in this situation and your brain doesn't bury it, so you're being traumatized in a situation, and you want to deal with it so it doesn't get buried away and you don't have to deal with it later, what's the appropriate way to deal with trauma? I mean, just about everyone here listening today, obviously including me and Adam, have lived through trauma just consciously, knowing trauma is going on. What do we do about it when we're experiencing it?
Yeah, that's a good question too. And one of the things that we don't want is to completely misunderstand or not be able to process the information that you're receiving. When you have intense emotions and you have a lot going on, and maybe you're sleep deprived, or maybe this thing has shocked you, and you're seeing something you haven't seen before, you're seeing something that's not natural to you, then it can be placed in this category where your brain doesn't understand it. And the only labels that your brain really has to put onto that category are those I am statements. So what we really want is to not allow this experience that you've had to connect to something of an identity statement, like an I am not safe, I'm trapped, I'm not loved, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I should have done something. All of these things start to connect to your identity, and you start to define yourself by that experience. And when those connect, that's what causes this triggering response in the future and that post-traumatic stress experience.
So let me throw out an example, if you don't mind sharing it, Ben, because it's an example of you, a story you told us all. So I'm not betraying something, I don't think. The first time you had a counselor at the VA and it didn't go so well, and I'm going to tell you what I remember the outcome being, and you can fill in as much of that as you want. It didn't go well. And your response from that situation was, I must be more messed up than I thought.
Yeah,
because can you fill in the details on that story, please? And
sure.
That's my example of, okay, you're dealing with it with those I am statements that you just talked about.
Yeah, and I thought, I'm relatively intelligent, I have some life experience, I can handle these things, right? And so it was me trying to make the analytics work in my own head. This piece fits that piece. Where is it coming from? How do I feel about it? And how can I get past it? Well, the primary treatment at the time in the VA was something called prolonged exposure theory, or prolonged exposure therapy, PET, which I'm absolutely against. For a long time, that's what we said was the gold standard of treatment for PTS in trauma therapy was PET. And the VA used it quite heavily. And for me, it was like saying, I'm going to give you this hammer. I want you to hit yourself in the hand with it until you don't feel it anymore. You just go numb, and then it won't bother you, and it won't be an issue. So they had me retell the thing that was keeping me up at night, the stuff in my nightmares, the most terrible things that I'd experienced in my own mind. I was supposed to write it down, repeat it to this professional that was in that space, and record it and listen to it over and over again. And the first time that I had this discussion and I relayed this story, I walked outside of the appointment and they closed the door. And it was this special trauma section of the VA because at the time they were separating what they called regular mental health and the trauma section of mental health. So we were out in these portable buildings away from the hospital, and they locked the door. So I went outside and I couldn't get back in. My heart started racing. I could hear my heartbeat in my ear kind of vibrating. And I sat down on a picnic table outside because there was nowhere else to go. And I felt my body just explode with all the hormones that my brain dumped to get me to run or fight this thing that I had been holding back for so long. And I had no idea that that was even possible. I had spent my entire military career being able to control all my responses, being able to act in a really high threat scenario, a really complex scenario with clarity, with complex problem solving, and all my executive processes intact, as well as all my physical capabilities. And this was the first time that I wasn't able to do that. So I sat down and I had this experience for 30 or 40 minutes and just poured sweat and couldn't think one clear thought except for, I'm going to die. And I went through that and I called them multiple times on my phone and it went to voicemail and I couldn't get back in to see anyone. So I drove home and I decided I was never going to do prolonged exposure therapy ever again.
Wow. What did finally work for you? You mentioned you found your own way through. What, if you can summarize, I know it has been and might still be a long journey, but what has worked for you?
So the one thing, there are multiple things that I grabbed from a lot of different theories and a lot of different learning. The one thing that has made the biggest impact for me was eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, something authored by a lady called Francine Shapiro. And the reality of EMDR is that your brain is making sense to itself instead of a counselor telling you how to think about this thing and you making logical explanation of it to yourself. Your brain actually goes in and grabs the information that was protected, that it didn't want to process. It disconnects it from your flight or fight response, and then it helps you pull it into adaptive information processing, the part of your brain where it can take all your knowledge and experience and make sense of this thing that you couldn't make sense of before. And it puts it in a category and it becomes short-term memory and then long-term memory. And the EMDR technique uses those I am statements as targets. You think of those statements, you do this bilateral stimulation, which at first was eye movement. Now it can be tactile or audio or anything else. And it connects your creative and analytical side of your brain and allows you access to all of your knowledge and understanding. And so you just simply unpack it in your own head without any other input. And you come away with something that you can understand, that you can remember without the flood of physical response and emotion that it was previously attached to.
All right. And since there aren't very many people that could find their own way through that, what we said on this show many times, and you've been here when we said it and you've heard it, we tell people follow your own conscience, not your reasoning, not your experience. That's the problem, is these experiences you've had. Follow your conscience for your healing. And we have not said do not get counseling, but neither have we said counseling is right for everyone. How do you address the question of, does everyone need counseling, or should everyone seek out counseling? What's your advice for that?
Yeah, I think it's a to each his own kind of thing. And I think everyone can benefit from therapy, but it's incredibly difficult to match with a therapist. There's such a huge need for mental health information and access to mental health. And it's such a young industry. I mean, if you think about it, we're, in the 1960s doing lobotomies and having what they called insane asylums at the time. That's not too long for us to have developed a pathway to real healing with mental health therapy. So it's a young industry, and we're still doing research and finding evidence-based treatment and best practices and understanding these things, whereas physical medicine goes back so much further. So we have so many more solutions, so many more answers in physical medicine. So sometimes when we're working with mental health, there may not be a professional that has the answer for you, or you may know your body best and your mind best, and you may be able to find the things that you do to de-stress and cope and understand yourself. And you may not need professional guidance for that. You may not need medication for that. There are ways to travel that path on your own, for sure. And there are ways to get some help from a third party or from a professional that might add some insight. There's so many things now that comprise what we call wellness, that include things like exercise, yoga, meditation, going fishing, finding things that you enjoy. Adam plays pickleball. He teaches others to play pickleball. He gets a lot out of that. You guys are on this podcast just talking about these things, connecting with people who have similar thoughts and feelings so that you can understand each other. And all of those things are helpful. And I would deem all of those things therapeutic. And so sometimes we match with a professional that can help us take that pathway, or they have something that we don't understand that they can help us get past. And maybe they can teach us some tools that we can use in the future to take care of the things that come in throughout our daily life. And I think a lot of people will come to me and they want to eliminate the stimulus. They want to eliminate emotion. They want things not to feel so bad. And the idea of mental health and about therapy entirely is not to eliminate emotion. It's to help you understand how to prepare yourself, and I call it setting the table. If you're going to eat soup, you can't just put a fork and knife on there and have a good meal, right? So you prepare, you set the table. You get these tools that you can use to digest the thing that comes in. You get past the thing that you can't understand yourself, And then you get the tools that allow you to take on whatever life brings to you.
There's just so much there to unpack, and it's so well said. Let me go back now to a few of these starred comments. One person asked the name of the doctor you referenced in Canada, and Dr. Vonda Kate spelled out her name for us here. Gabor Mate, is that right, Ben?
Yeah, Gabor Mate is M-A-T-E, G-A-B-O-R-M-A-T-E. He wrote a book just recently called The Myth of Normal, which is really good, that talks about trauma and healing in what he calls a toxic culture. And there are a lot of things on YouTube and a lot of things that you can just check out where he's defining trauma and he's explaining what he thinks we view as normal. He's a really educated and very highly experienced individual in treating people in physical medicine. And he has a great perspective on mental illness and trauma and how physical and mental connect in the places where he's worked. And so I think he does a really good job of helping us understand what's going on.
Okay, very good. And a quick sub note here that is Dr. Vonda K. Dr. Vonda K, I believe, is a counselor also. And Dr. Vonda, we would like to know more about you, maybe not during this podcast, but we'd like to either know more about you so we can talk about you or bring you on and get your experience too, because we want to have too many people looking for help that Ben can't handle them all. We want other people, other resources we can refer people to. And now that I've said that, let me make it clear. Ben can work with virtually anyone here. Ben, tell us what restraints you have. People are wondering, well, why can't I just work with Ben? Is that a possibility?
I love working with everyone, but I do have a limited time. So yes, let's discuss that. I'm licensed in Texas and in Utah, and so I can do therapy with anyone who is in either of those two states, and then I do coaching with anybody else outside of that. And those are two different things. Therapy is based on a treatment plan and a diagnosis and these evidence-based practices like EMDR and CBT and these things that you've heard of and heard me talking about. And coaching is more like what Adam does, helping people be accountable for goals that they're trying to make and changes that they're trying to make more in a behavioral way. And so I can do all of that work, but anytime you're working with a mental health therapist for the now short term, they're licensed in a particular state. So if you live in that state, you can work with somebody who's licensed there. In the near future, with the counseling compact, there are, I think now 39 states that are included in that. And so you can work with a therapist who's licensed in any one of those states and you live in any one of those states. So that's coming very soon. I think within the next year. It's been pushed back already about 18 months. But all these states signed up for the compact and they just don't have the requirements completely agreed upon yet. So when that happens, I'll be able to do therapy or clinical mental health with people in all these different places.
So we will make a big announcement about that and which states are available when Ben is cleared in the other states to provide counseling. But he could work with anyone on a coaching basis at any time, even now. And Rachel, going by Allie79, says, "Bless your heart, Ben. Greatly appreciate you sharing everything with us and being vulnerable." And we all appreciate that. And I imagine people that are looking for counselors, that's probably a breath of fresh air. I have limited experience, but I know it's hard to find, and it may not be important to you, but it's hard to find counselors that you can relate to. And counselors that are vulnerable are usually more relatable in my little experience. So I'll go on with what agree with what Rachel says. Thank you for being that way, Ben. And another appropriate question. Hi, Ben. How is Alice? For those that don't know, tell us who Alice is and why she's wildly partying without us.
Yeah, Alice is my wife of 25 years. So she has her own post-traumatic stress dealing with me and all the things that I've been through. But we just celebrated our 25th anniversary in June. She is obviously not connected to our immediate family, which is a good thing, except by marriage now. So she comes off much more favorably than any of us do. So a lot of people like to see how she's doing and chat with her. She's just a lot more pleasant and fun to be around. That's why she's not here with us, because she's doing all the things for my oldest son's birthday party today.
Very good. And Alice has been a big part of Ben's story, as he mentioned. He mentioned it a little bit jokingly, but those of us that have heard her story, and we want to hear more of it in the future. She has been a tremendous part and gained tremendous insight being Ben's wife while he struggled through finding how to deal with his own PTS. She was a part of all that and raising their 3 children during his 17 years of military service back and forth. Who knows where he was? And, and she was keeping the home fires burning, so to speak, and trying to live her life and raise the 3 boys. A very, very compelling story. And Alice has friends who also have compelling stories that we've invited on the show. Isn't it funny, Ben, that it's really tough to get people that have these great experiences? It's tough to line up the timing to get them on the show, isn't it?
Yeah, we've been struggling with that a little bit. And I think we're connected to a lot of people through our military experience and through that kind of part of our family that have gone through several things. And what I learned treating veterans is that most of us that come through our wartime experience or our military experience with post-traumatic stress have actually had some other type of trauma experience prior to that. That is the thing that we couldn't explain at the time that created our trauma has now, we've been protected from it for so long, and now it's coming forward because we spent all our time and energy in this other place doing these other things, and it's kind of overloaded our ability to hold on to that or hold it back. And so now that capacity for coping and for, compartmentalizing these things has diminished. And so we find a lot of people in our military family with post-traumatic stress. And so Alice was connected with people all through that time that have experienced some crazy things, and they have their own stories. And a lot of people are ready to talk about that, and we haven't quite lined up the scheduling. And some people just aren't ready to get onto a forum like this, even though you guys make it very comfortable. They're not ready to just openly communicate about it. And that's part of our protective mechanism and part of our isolating instinct that keeps us from healing, keeping us from sharing these things. We think we're going to hurt other people, or we think we're going to scare other people. They don't know what to do with what we have to share. And so what we're really trying to do, Alice and I both, is along with the way that you guys have created this amazing community where people are safe to share their experiences, say, come share it with us, and it'll help all these other people. And we want to do that in a place that's safe and inviting to that. And this community has really been safe and inviting, and that's a place where people can feel comfortable talking. So we're just trying to line all these things up. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes I get frustrated about that.
Yes, we all do, and sometimes moving comes into play. And Ben shared that he's moving this fall. Adam's in the process of a road trip. I guess you didn't tell us the details, Adam. Did you want to fill? Oh yeah, you did. You told us great details because you're doing that, offering to do that for anybody in the community. That is very nice of you. So you must be enjoying the road trip, Adam.
Road trips are great. I got my diet. My great. I got my what's called pumpkin seeds. And the in the car for 6 hours. Almost there. About 30 minutes away. And, very peaceful. Do therapy as I drive. I don't turn on the radio. No, being in radio for 30 years and trying to encourage people to listen to my radio. But then when I actually get in the car, I never turn the radio on. I just go silent and just let my brain think. So I kind of like sitting here driving, listening to you guys.
Okay, so we can't hear a lot of that, Adam. Your sound is back and forth. I heard something about pumpkin seeds. Hope I didn't hear anything about mushrooms. Can't remember quite what you're saying, but we
I think sugar
we
water
got
diet,
Is
sugar
it ter-
water.
is the audio terrible right now? Is this terrible too?
it's not great, but it's better than it was. But we heard you're a half hour away, which you were 20 minutes ago. So that's why we're wondering about the mushrooms coming
Well,
in.
every time you look at the GPS, it keeps on growing and growing.
Yeah, either that or you just don't know where you are. But
He's driving in
I'm
circles
just
out
going.
there.
I thought I would be there by now, but I still got everything's 30 minutes.
Exactly. That's a frustrating part of something like that. But anyway, so Ben and Alice are moving this fall. He'll still be able to help people. He can do that long distance or really long distance, apparently. Um, Ben, another question coming back to the subject at hand. Do you have any pets that help with stress?
I do have a pet that helps cause stress. Does that count, or is that a different category that we can
I
talk
don't
about?
think that's what they were getting at. Since Lee T has a cat as her thumbnail, I think she was looking for something more positive.
So we have a dog that we rescued. That's actually kind of a crazy story. We were trying to get this purebred Great Dane because my wife is in love with Great Danes, and we got this mutt Catahoula that was nothing like a Great Dane, because if we didn't take him in, he would have died for sure. I called him 5K at the beginning because that's how much it cost to get him healthy. And then he ate like a rope toy when he was a puppy, and he had to do emergency surgery. And we had pet insurance, but of course it was Memorial Day weekend, so our vet wasn't there, so it didn't cover it. And so I have this one animal that causes a ton of stress, but he's part of the family. He's really he's coming over today. He's been hanging out with my son, and he's a black and silver, like leopard spotted dog. That's like a hog hunting dog from Louisiana. So we call him Timmy because we're all Spurs fans. And so he's Timmy from the Spurs with Spurs colors. So yes, he relieves stress. The boys love him. He's been a great part of our family for a long time. He's just kind of got a funny story, but I do think that pets are a great way to have a companion that can give you some comfort and help you feel connected and loved and all of those things. Some pets are also a cause of stress, and so those are definitely some categories that are separate there. But I know there are a lot of organizations, and especially in the veteran community, that are trying to help veterans get dogs that will help with PTS. And there are a lot of people that are training dogs to be companions that can help you with the things that you experience, especially those moments where you get flooded with emotion. They're highly intelligent animals. These are great trainers. And you can get a dog that has a lot of qualities and talents that can be useful to you if you suffer from some of these things. So looking at that, there are nonprofits all over the place that do that type of training and give those kind of dogs in a charitable way to people that are struggling through things.
Very good. Thank you for that. Another related question from Nina Canadian. EMDR helped me break a cycle that was beyond my control. Is that a common benefit of EMDR?
Yeah, and I think it's because we all feel like at some level we can handle the things that we're struggling with. And sometimes there's something that we can't quite explain that's trapped in there in the limbic system, and you're not going to do that on your own. You've got to get in there without your protective mechanism. And that's what EMDR does. It can break that cycle of you tripping over this thing, or what people call being triggered. You get triggered and you get this fight or flight response, and EMDR can help disconnect that trigger from the fight or flight response so that you can unpack this thing that you haven't been able to figure out. So that is a common experience. I see it happen all the time. I use EMDR every day in my therapy practice. And I see people be able to go through something in their own head over a short period of time and come away with a completely different understanding of it and feel completely differently when they talk about it. So they're not excited and emotional and connected to these intense responses where they feel like they're going to die if they talk about it or if they think about it. And instead, they're able to just communicate about their experience. Like I can come on here and just tell you that I was sexually abused when I was a kid. that's not something that everyone can just say out loud. And EMDR really helps to disconnect that feeling of emergency survival from this memory that you have. It happens all the time. It's a great way to get through that.
All right. Another question about another therapy from Cindy. Hi, Ben. I've been recommended for EBT. Do you have any information on that type of therapy?
And anybody who's a therapist or a counselor or PsyD or anything like that can add into this if they want. What I understand EBT to be is evidence-based therapy. I don't know that there's a therapy that has an acronym that's EBT other than that. Evidence-based practice, EBP, or evidence-based therapy, EBT, is just something that has been researched credibly and has a reliability score, essentially, that it says this therapy can be practiced in this way, and when you do it in this way, it has these consistent results. And so that's just another way of saying evidence-based practice or research-based therapeutic practice, which comes with a diagnosis, a treatment plan, and then some measurable outcomes, so that your therapist can say to you, hey, I want you to answer these 5 questions, and when you do, they can say, you're at this level, or at this level of distress, or at this level of concern, or have this going on, and they can quantify it for you, and it can be measured. That's how I understand it. I don't know if there's another therapy that's the acronym EBT. I'll tell you that when I was going through school, I used to call it therapy by thesaurus, because there are all these 3-letter acronyms, and a lot of them have similar principles. CBT, CPT, ACT, REBT, you know, these are all kind of renamed therapies that have very similar foundations and a lot of similar practices and tools, and somebody has changed something about it and then authored it as a therapy. And so there are a lot of those out there, and I'm not sure EBT might have another translation that I'm not aware of.
Okay, so help us out on that if you know something different. But Ben, thanks for that answer. Dalton Country Girl, who let us know she's been lurking, and welcome. That we have most of our listeners for this podcast are lurkers. In other words, we don't hear from them in comments. We love our lurkers as much as we love the people that comment. Maybe we love the commenters a little bit more, but we love all of them. But we know not everyone listens where they can comment. Not everyone wants to comment. But when you show up every once in a while and say, hey, I've been lurking and just haven't commented much, that's what Dalton Country Girl told us about her. So thank you. And she asked, isn't EDMR very scary? A lot of side effects?
I think it is scary. I think therapy is kind of scary. I always tell my clients it's kind of like going to the dentist. I don't know a lot of people that say, I'm so happy I have a dentist appointment this week and I'm going to go have a great time at the dentist office, because you're going in there to do something uncomfortable, right? You do something with somebody who can help you get something done you can't do on your own. So the dentist fills your cavity, but then you can brush your own teeth and you can use flossing tools and techniques and special toothbrushes and all that. And so therapy is kind of like that, where sometimes we have something that's going to be really uncomfortable that we work on together to get past. And then you're going to learn tools and techniques that you can use on your own that are easier to use, that can keep you healthy. And so I think for anyone diving into something that they've been protecting themselves from for a long time is going to be a little bit scary. I think it takes a lot of courage to get in to a therapy session with someone. I call myself the random guy on the other side of the internet sometimes, because you're just getting on with me online, and then you're going to talk to me about the thing that you've been keeping yourself from diving into. So I think, yeah, that's really scary. I think it's a therapist's responsibility to create a safe environment for you to do that, a place where you feel like you can do that, and it's going to lead to wellness and give you hope that by doing that, you're not just going to hurt yourself. You're going to come to a better understanding, and it's going to feel differently. You're going to think about it differently. You're going to connect to it differently, and it's going to be a much more positive experience. So EMDR in and of itself is simply bilateral stimulation, which can be tapping like this, or it can be audio sounds in one ear or another, or literally touching your fingers or your face while you're thinking about that target. If my target was I'm not good enough, I'm going to think of a time where I felt that and heard that message in my own head, and I'm going to tap. or follow someone's finger and my eyes are going to move back and forth. And I'm just going to think about it and let my brain kind of go on a train ride, making connections to it and help me understand it better. You can stop it at any time by yourself. You're in complete control during that entire process. So you can stop tapping, you can breathe, you can say, I don't want to get into that, or that's too intense, let's try something else, or I want to think about something else. And so you have complete control in that therapeutic process of EMDR. So where it's kind of scary coming into it, I think with the right practitioner, you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable. And most of the time, you'll start with something that's not the 10 out of 10 in the background that you've been hiding from for so long. You're going to start with something that's a 2 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10 on that scale, so that you can get comfortable with the experience and understand that you have control of it and that you're going to live through it and come out with something positive on the other end. And then you might dive into something that's a little more intense or a little more distressful.
Well, great answer. Thank you for that. And I need to tell everyone, if you're watching, please read the live comments. I can't get to all of them. There's such a great complimentary discussion complementing what Ben's talking about here in the comments. For those of you who are listening and not watching, please find on YouTube or somewhere where the podcast later, it's going to be posted on our channel, so you can read those comments. There's a lot of good information. I'll get to as many of them as I can about people's experience. And this is what we love about the community. We have an expert on like Ben, and we have several experts. Ben's an expert because of his experience and education, and there's several other experts that are experts because of their experience. And some very rich, information and experiences here. I just probably won't get to all of them, but that you noticed at the last comment I had up there that she was actually the Dalton Country Girl is actually asking Nina Canadian, and so Ben's explanation perfectly valid, and then Nina responded to it also and said, "Well, I didn't." She's saying, "I didn't experience that the negative part of that. In my counselor's office, using eye movements, safe place thoughts, rhythm, it felt like reprogramming my brain because it was short circuiting." And
it's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, I appreciate how Ben's not sugarcoating anything and saying, "Well, good grief, any therapy can be scary." And I agree with that. Just going to a therapist is a little bit scary. It was for me because of my ego. And, I don't want the therapist to tell me how messed up I am. I want to be the only one that knows that. But the therapist can see that right away, of course. And, so that's scary, just regular talking with someone that can see through you. So in that sense, of course, anything can be scary, but thanks. And there are a couple other people that have shared their experience with EMDR. If I can find the right comment. Missy, by the way, I saw you in the comments here, so I know you got back to somewhere where you could get on. Feel free to rejoin and come and do the moderating here, because I'm all alone with the moderating. Poor little me. But someone, let me try to find it. Just talked about, if we go back to the subject of EBT. Here's someone else's comment. Let's see. Cindy asked about EBT, and see, now I didn't see. I'm terrible as a moderator. I didn't star it. Now I can't find my own the own question I wanted to put up there. So while I do that, let me just share this, Ben, from Alley79. I'm not throwing out compliments just because. I really hope Ben knows how rare he is, what a gift he is in the community and in his profession. There are not a lot of counselors as open as Ben. That's been my limited experience too, Rachel. So thanks for sharing that.
It's really sweet. It's nice of you to say. I definitely traveled through my own difficulties to get to where I am and feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing with all that I've come through. And it feels really good to help people.
Dr. Vonda agreed with her. Just wanted to put that up too. She's paying the same tribute to you. Ms. Carolyn, now I haven't seen that name on here before. So Ms. Carolyn, welcome. And maybe it's just, I'm old. I forget things. I could have forgotten your name, but welcome. First time I've seen you comment on here. And thank you for that. EMDR doesn't have side effects. It's a process that allows you to process trauma without having to relive it in an out of control way. It's incredibly helpful and calming activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's really the important part of it, is that you're doing it in a place where you feel like you are in control. You do come around to a positive feeling, especially if your therapist is doing it right. It's really hard to do it wrong, because it's really your own brain working interior, instead of someone presenting things to you to understand and digest. And so it does really come to that adaptive belief of self. So we talked about the negative idea. Those I am nots are the things that I call the big lie. And then the adaptive belief is an I am statement that's positive. I am good enough. I did the best I could with what I had. I'm capable. I'm loved. All of these things, I can accept appropriate responsibility, are adaptive beliefs about yourself. And the goal of EMDR is to travel from that negative belief that's really a lie, that's been placed in there by misunderstanding or lack of experience and knowledge, to come to travel through that processing, to come to a place where you realize, oh, I am good enough. That really is a misunderstanding of that experience, or of myself, or of the people that I was around. And really, the truth of all of this is I'm good enough. And so, like, what is it, Ms. Carolyn said, it's helpful and calming, because you start to feel differently about the experience, and your brain starts to process it differently and think of it differently. And so you're not tied up by it, you're not trapped by it, and you're not protecting yourself from it anymore.
Good, thanks, Ben. Thanks for that, and thanks, Ms. Carolyn, for commenting on that. I asked Dr. Vonda a little bit about herself. Here's why she hasn't said anything before, because most of us can't understand it anyway. She says, I'm a neuropsychopharmacologist. I study I can't even read the does in between the big words. I study the pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetics effects of methamphetamines on learning. She has a PhD and an EDD, which is the equivalent of an educational advanced degree, PhD or doctorate. So thank you for throwing out those words and showing that I don't even know how to read very well, Dr. Vonda, but we appreciate that background, and always appreciate your comments. Thank you very much. She's been a long-term friend with us. Just following up like that, she studied cognitive science and epigenetics in her EDD. She studied neuroscience and pharmacology in her PhD. She has a master's degree in psychology, and she is an addict to Family Feud. She didn't put that. I just wanted to put something normal about her, because I'm sure she has a normal side too. So
it sounds like she has a lot of information that I don't have.
Right. Right. Okay, here's getting back to, this is from Grandma Debbie. Hello, Grandma. My therapist recommends EMDR for me. She's not trained in it. Can it be done online, or does it need to be in person, Ben?
Yeah, it can be done both ways. I learned it in person. I used it in person for a long time, and I was very skeptical about whether or not it could be as beneficial online. But I am 100% online, so I'm only a telehealth therapist, or only virtual now. I just work out of my home so I can be with my family and be around my boys when they need me and things like that. So I do all of my EMDR online, and have been doing that for probably 2 solid years, 2.5 maybe. And it works just exactly the same. It's a beautiful thing. The difference that you'll see is that if you were in my office sitting across from me face to face, I would have a machine that has, lights that move back and forth so you can follow it with your eyes, and these little tappers that vibrate so you could just hold them in your hands, and that would be the tapping. When we're online, there's something you can use that has a dot going across your screen so you could follow it with your eyes, or you can just tap on your own body just as long as it's bilateral. It's on either side, so you can tap your fingers or anything like that. So it can be done online and it can be done in person, and there's no difference in the efficacy or the outcomes. And that's the important part. As long as you can get past just talking to the random dude on your computer, you can have an effective therapy either way.
Very good. Boy, more great insight. Again, I'm looking at the comments here. And as I promised, I won't get to all the good ones. So please, when you get a chance, read the comments from this, especially those you to whom this is resonating. You have questions, a lot of answers also in the comments about this. But this really shows us, Adam, that a lot of people in our demographic here, a lot of our optimists, need what Ben is teaching and what our other guests have been teaching. And so I love that this is a safe place for people to come and share, because people are safe talking about it, which helps the people that aren't safe talking about it. The majority of people who are listening to the podcast or watching the podcast who don't participate in the comments, and for whatever reason, but for some of them, I'm sure it's because they just aren't safe yet, or they don't need to, but they want the information. So we love hearing that, or love knowing that.
Rex, if I can jump in too, I just saw some things scrolling through about CBT and DBT, and I just wanted to touch on those because they're so helpful and very valuable as well. I talk a lot about EMDR, I use a lot of it, but I use elements of CBT, ACT, and DBT in the maintenance of and the tools that I present to my clients after they've disconnected their fight or flight from their traumatic experience. So cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy, those are all those acronyms. They're really good in the analytical and the pragmatic part of your brain. So when you're using your executive function to process information, when you're using critical thinking to solve problems, those are very helpful techniques and tools that you can use to, say, for example, connect your identity with your values and make choices that combine those things, or to do cognitive disputations, reframing thoughts or challenging thoughts that come into your head that aren't helpful, like those negative thoughts we were talking about. And so when you have those types of issues, because you've been dealing with trauma for so long, this is a way of doing the maintenance or helping yourself reinforce the mental pathways that are valuable and positive. And so those therapies and pieces of those therapies are really important in the aftermath of EMDR, or using them for therapy, for the only therapeutic technique as well. As long as you can get to your cognitive function and have your kind of whole window of mental capacity available to you, those are really great ways to do the same thing. And those are evidence-based practices. So we talked about all those things. I just wanted to kind of wrap all that in there because I saw several comments about it.
Yeah, and she is correcting her earlier, I guess, typos. She meant DBT. So that's good that you clarified that. Let's look at this one from Nina Canadian. Here's a thought-provoking question. Can you apply EMDR to the Cox-Connor trauma, meaning the Lori situation, I imagine? Like Adam could confront—
or many of the other things.
Yeah, or yeah, our family is certainly a normal family in that regard, isn't it? Even without the Lori, Alex, Chad thing, it's several shades of messed up. I say we are several shades of messed up. I'm certainly not excluding myself in that. But going on with Nina's question, for example, could Adam confront feelings he avoids? That's personal, sorry, but good example, yes?
It's a great example.
Can I confront what?
You can confront the feelings that you avoid, she says, or could you with EMDR?
Yes. Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Well, the question's for Ben.
Do I trust Ben to be my therapist?
Maybe if we were playing pickleball, I could sneak it in.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
We
see,
could,
if you could sneak stuff in on me, but I don't know about it. Like when we had, who do we have on Dr. Slade?
Yep. Yeah,
When we
Dr.
had, yeah, when we had him on, Rex slid that right in, and we did a whole therapy session on the podcast.
yeah. Now, if I can get the ball, if I could be good enough against you in pickleball to get the ball moving side to side on the court, I just start talking to you about a few things and get you thinking about it, and that would be your bilateral stimulation. And we would
Perfect.
just, have a chat. I'll make some jokes. We'll do some
Yeah.
processing. You won't even know what hit you.
And then we check it off the box that I went to therapy. I'm all for it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I think that is a good example. Yes, you can do that. I've done it, and I strongly encourage my family members to do it. I try not to be my family member's therapist. That's a conflict of interest, as they say in the ethics of our industry. And so I have to find therapists that I think are really good, that can handle the stuff that my family members are handling. And I always advocate for it. So yeah, that's a great example.
Very good. Thanks for asking, Nina, so we could slide that in there. Get that in on Adam. I know we're right at an hour here, but let me, since someone else says it, and Adam and I say it a lot, but Erica Mesa points out about this community. Everyone in this chat's so loving and supportive towards each other. Thank you, Rex, Adam, and Ben, for creating, dang, I lost my breath, man, creating such a safe space for everyone. I really appreciate Ben being so vulnerable and open. Yes, we all do. We all do. And let's see, there are a couple others. Oh, I wanted to put this one up here because it's true. Dr. Vonda K said, Rex's family is full of some very intelligent people. Amen to that. Ben represents us probably better than is the average in the family. But wait till y'all get to meet my granddaughter. I won't spend a lot of time bragging about her, but my 15-year-old granddaughter, whose book is in editing to be published by Many Realms Media. There just aren't too many 15-year-olds that come back from summer vacation, can go to school. Now, she is way too shy to do this, but I tried to get her to answer when a teacher says, what'd you do during summer vacation? Oh, I finished a book and got it published. Just wait till I talk about her. I know I'm talking about her now, but yeah, there's our family, like your family, is full of a lot of intelligent people, and we like that. We appreciate that in our family. We don't always agree in our family. We don't agree. You know, as Adam and I have been very open about, we are not family representatives. In fact, when I was on Court TV, I mentioned that earlier that I was on. Adam wasn't able to be on. And Vinny asked a question about the family. And I said, let me make it clear. I am not representing our family because we have such varying opinions on a lot of what's going on with the trials and the situations. I'll throw that in as a comment because we didn't talk about it here, and I put it in the title of this live. But to me, it was very significant that the Maricopa prosecutors said that mentioned the immunity agreements that were issued in Idaho for the previous trials. Those are not valid in Arizona. And so there are not immunity agreements in Arizona. So we'll talk about that sometime when we're talking about the trials again. That's rather.
Guys, real quick, I made it to my destination. Here I am. I got to unload. My new career is calling. I got to unload all these boxes. My new moving career is starting. So I hate to jump and leave, but I thank you, Ben and Rex. I learned a lot by just listening. I appreciate both of you.
And just so people don't worry too much, this moving career is only going to last another couple of hours for Adam. He'll still be a pickleball pro. and which I'm going to rely on. I played pickleball today, Adam, so I'm going to be relying on your coaching there.
Oh.
And so
I hope it went well. I hope it went well for you.
Lisa and I both. Well, we were on different teams and we split 1-1, so that did go well.
That's not bad.
Yep, not bad. So thanks Adam for joining while you're driving and putting everyone at risk there on the freeway, but surviving.
I'm a good driver.
Okay, right.
Be safe.
All right. And Ben, again, thanks so much. We'll let you get back to the to Daniel's celebration, birthday celebration, and all the family time. And let me add on to that if I could. He mentioned being around the boys. His boys are tremendous. I loved getting to meet them again. I say it that way because when I saw him a couple of weeks ago, it was the first time in 10 or 12 years. And frankly, the only thing I've remembered about them is that they are Spurs fans. I am not a Spurs fan, so it wasn't necessarily a fond memory. But to meet them again as adults, young adults, they are just tremendous.
Yeah,
so
we
I
have
love
a great time hanging out together. I'm gonna try to beat them in ping pong today, see if I can hold down my family bragging rights. But they traveled through a lot, and all those years of my military service, didn't give us a ton of time together. So now I try to spend every minute I can with them.
Yeah, you're doing great. They're great people. Your wife's a great person. Wish your son a happy birthday, probably from all of us. We'll probably see the comments. Thank you all for hanging with us. We'll be, for those of you on Patreon, we're going to try one more time to see if anyone's interested in talking with me and with Adam. Not scripted at all. Any questions valid? We're going to do this on Zoom on Patreon Thursday, September 19th. So that's this coming Thursday. Yeah, that's right. Thursday the 19th, 4:30 Mountain Time. If you are not a Patreon member and you want to join that, just send us an email, rexandadam@gmail.com, and we'll send you the link. You don't have to join Patreon. We're just going to give you a chance to see if there's any value of that for you. So rexandadam@gmail.com will get you on that Zoom community chat Thursday, September 19th, 4:30 Mountain Time. And let's see, be with us next. We're expecting the next few weeks, we're expecting some of Ben's friends, guests, people here on the podcast. You won't want to miss that either. So looking forward to hearing from you, reading more of the comments. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, whether it was making comments or just being there listening. We see the number here, so we know each person is one of those numbers. Thank you, and tremendous comments and support for each other, in addition to Ben, me, and Adam. Thank you for that, and take care.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Rex.
You bet. Thanks for being with us, Ben.